The winter had come early that year. The plains were covered with thick snow, and the wind blew hard across the open land. Jack Thornton sat by the fire in his small cabin, staring into the flickering flames. He had built the cabin himself, a sturdy place of wood and stone that stood alone at the edge of the frontier. Life out here was harsh, but Jack had always liked it. He liked the quiet, the wide sky, and the freedom that came with living far from the towns and their rules. He knew the dangers of the land, the wolves, the cold, and the loneliness, but he had learned to face them with courage and skill. That evening, as Jack was sharpening his knives by the fire, he heard a faint sound outside. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but then he heard it again, a soft, uneven cry that carried through the snowstorm. Jack stood, wrapped his coat tightly around his shoulders, and went to the door. The wind was biting, and snow whipped across his face. But through the swirling white, he saw a figure struggling toward the cabin. It was a woman, moving slowly, almost falling into the snow with every step. Jack did not hesitate. He opened the door wide and called to her. "Come in! Come in quickly!" She looked up at him, her face pale, and lips blue from the cold. Her eyes were wide with fear and exhaustion. She tried to speak, but the wind caught her words. Jack reached out his hand, helping her inside. Once the door was shut against the storm, he guided her to the fire. He took off her wet cloak and wrapped a warm blanket around her trembling shoulders. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. She introduced herself as Ayanna, a traveler from a distant place. She spoke in a voice that carried the rhythm of her homeland. And Jack noticed that her eyes held a quiet strength, even though she looked tired and frightened. Jack offered her food and hot tea. She drank slowly, and he could see her relaxing a little. "You should not have been out in this storm," Jack said. "It is dangerous. You could have frozen to death." "I had no choice," she replied. "I was traveling to my family, but the storm came suddenly. I could not find shelter anywhere. I thought I might not survive." Jack nodded, understanding too well the cruelty of the winter plains. "You are safe now," he said. "You can stay here until the storm passes." As the fire warmed them both, Ayanna began to speak of her home and her people. Her people followed traditions that had been passed down for generations. One law, in particular, struck Jack as strange. She explained that in her tribe, if a woman was given shelter by someone in their home, she became tied to that person by an unbreakable bond. It was a law of respect, protection, and honor. Jack frowned, thinking this sounded like superstition. "You mean, I cannot just let you go after the storm?" he asked. Ayanna shook her head. "The law is strong. If I leave without your permission, my people would see it as dishonor. I could be punished for breaking it. That is why I must stay if you allow it." Jack leaned back in his chair, considering this. He had never faced anything like it. He had always lived by his own rules and respected the laws of the land. But this was different. This was not a matter of survival alone, it was a matter of honor and tradition that had endured for centuries. For the next few days, the storm raged on. Jack and Ayanna spent their time tending the fire, repairing the cabin, and sharing stories. Ayanna told him about the customs of her people, their respect for the land, the way they cared for each other, and the stories of their ancestors. Jack listened carefully, fascinated by her knowledge and the depth of her connection to her heritage. In return, he told her about life on the frontier, the challenges of cattle driving, hunting in the wild, and the solitude that came with living far from towns. Despite the tension of the law that bound them, the two grew closer. Jack saw Ayanna not as a stranger, but as someone who had endured much hardship and carried herself with courage and dignity. Ayanna began to trust Jack, feeling safe in his presence, even though she had never met him before. There was a quiet understanding between them, a respect that needed no words. One evening, After a particularly long day of clearing snow and repairing the cabin roof, Jack looked at Ayanna as she tended the fire. The warmth of the flames reflected in her eyes, and he realized that this law, strange as it seemed, had brought them together in a way neither of them expected. He wondered what it meant for his future. Was he to consider her as part of his life permanently? The thought was both daunting and comforting. Ayanna, sensing his concern, spoke gently. "Do not worry, Jack. I did not come here to trouble you. I came because I had no other choice. If you choose to let me stay, it will be because you wish it, not because the law forces you." Jack nodded, appreciating her honesty. He had always believed that freedom and choice were essential, and here was a person who respected that, even while bound by her own traditions. The storm finally began to ease. The wind softened, and the snow stopped falling, leaving the plains covered in a thick, white blanket. Jack knew that soon, the question of what to do next would have to be answered. He could not simply ignore the law that Ayanna had described, nor could he send her away without risking her dishonor. He faced a choice that tested both his courage and his sense of morality. That night, as the fire burned low and the cabin was silent except for the crackle of the embers, Jack thought about the journey that had brought them together. A simple act of kindness, opening his door to a stranger, had created a situation he could not have imagined. He realized that helping someone in need could change lives in ways no one could foresee. Ayanna slept on a blanket near the fire, her breathing calm and steady. Jack watched her for a moment, thinking about the harsh world outside and the warmth they had found together inside the cabin. He knew that, whatever happened next, their lives were now connected in a way that went beyond the storm, beyond the plains, and beyond the simple act of giving shelter. By morning, the sun rose over the snowy landscape, casting a pale gold light across the plains. Jack and Ayanna stepped outside to see the world transformed by the storm. Everything was quiet, and the air was crisp. Jack felt a strange sense of peace, knowing that whatever choice he made, he had acted with kindness and honor. Ayanna looked around, taking in the beauty of the snow-covered land. "It is so different from home," she said softly. "But it feels safe here, thanks to you." Jack smiled, though his mind was still weighed with the question of the law. "We will figure it out," he said. "I will do what is right, and we will face it together." And so, the first chapter of their story ended not with a decision, but with understanding. Two lives, brought together by a storm, bound by honor, and tied by a law that neither fully understood, but both respected. The plains were still wild, the future uncertain, but for the moment, they were safe, and that was enough. Jack knew that soon he would have to confront the reality of the tribal law, the elders who would come, and the choices that lay ahead. But for now, he felt a rare sense of fulfillment. He had helped someone in need, and in doing so, had discovered that kindness and courage often come together in the most unexpected ways. The morning after the storm was quiet, but the calm did not last long. Jack had barely begun to enjoy the soft sunlight on the snow when he saw distant figures approaching across the plains. They moved with purpose, their forms steady and deliberate, even through the snow. Jack felt a familiar tension in his chest. He knew, without asking, who they must be. Ayanna's people had come. Ayanna noticed them first. She stepped close to Jack, her eyes wide but steady. "They are coming for me," she said quietly. There was no fear in her voice, only acceptance. "The elders. They must see that I am safe, and that the law is honored." Jack studied the approaching figures. There were 3 of them, tall and strong, wearing traditional clothing of her people. Their presence carried authority and dignity. Jack straightened his coat and went to meet them halfway, knowing that respect was the only way to gain their trust. When he reached them, the eldest of the 3 spoke first. His voice was firm but not unkind. "We have come for Ayanna. She is bound by the law of our tribe. We must see that it is respected. Jack nodded. I understand. She is safe. And I have treated her with care. I only want what is right for her. Ilon Hilly 9. I only want what is right for her. The elder studied Jack carefully. You have given her shelter in a time of need. That is honorable. But the law is clear. You must accept the consequences of your kindness. Jack looked at Ayanna. She met his gaze, her eyes calm. Jack, she said softly, the law is not meant to harm you. It only asks for respect. We will find a way together. The elder spoke again. The bond that the law creates is not forced. It is an agreement, based on respect and protection. If both of you choose, the bond can be mutual. Jack felt a mixture of relief and caution. He had not expected the elders to be reasonable, yet here they were, offering a solution that honored both tradition and choice. He realized that his act of kindness had brought him into a relationship not only with Ayanna, but also with her people, their customs, and their values. Ayanna stepped forward. I choose to stay, she said. Not because the law requires it, but because I trust Jack. He has protected me, cared for me, and treated me with honor. I wish to remain with him, if he agrees. Jack felt a warmth spread through his chest. He had faced many dangers in his life, but this moment, this connection, built on trust, respect, and understanding, was more meaningful than any battle he had fought. He nodded. Then we are agreed, he said. The elders smiled, a rare softness in their expressions. Then, the bond is recognized, the eldest said. May your lives be guided by respect, courage, and care for each other. With the matter settled, the elders prepared to leave. Ayanna thanked them, bowing her head in respect. Jack watched as they disappeared across the snow-covered plains, leaving him and Ayanna standing together, free to begin their new life. The days that followed were filled with work and learning. Jack taught Ayanna the ways of the frontier, how to care for the animals, repair fences, and manage the land through changing seasons. She, in turn, shared the knowledge of her people. She showed Jack how to track animals in the snow, how to find edible plants even in winter, and how to read the signs of nature that many settlers overlooked. Their lives became a balance of strength and wisdom. Jack admired Ayanna's skill and her calm presence. She admired his courage and his willingness to help someone in need, even at personal risk. Together, they made the cabin a home, a place of warmth and safety amidst the vast, cold plains. As the months passed, the bond between them grew stronger. It was not a bond forced by law, but one built on respect, trust, and shared experiences. They faced challenges together, harsh winters, unexpected predators, and the isolation of frontier life. But they always had each other. One evening, after a long day of work, Jack and Ayanna sat by the fire. The wind howled outside, but inside, the cabin was warm. Ayanna looked at Jack with a thoughtful expression. It is strange, she said. When I first came here, I feared the law that bound me. But now, I see that it brought us together. Without it, we may never have met. Jack smiled. I have learned that laws and traditions can be powerful, but it is the choices we make that truly matter. I chose to help you. You chose to stay. That is what makes our bond real. Their conversation was interrupted by the soft sound of snow falling against the roof. They listened quietly, sharing the moment without words. Both understood that the world outside was unpredictable. But within the walls of the cabin, they had found stability, companionship, and respect. Over time, neighbors and travelers began to hear of their story. People were curious about the woman from the distant tribe and the cowboy who had given her shelter. Some came with questions, others with admiration. Jack and Ayanna shared their experiences openly, explaining how kindness, respect, and understanding had brought them together. Their story became a lesson to the community that helping others, even strangers, could lead to unexpected and positive outcomes. Ayanna became an important part of Jack's life in the local community. She used her knowledge of nature and tribal practices to help others survive the harsh frontier winters. Jack continued to manage the ranch, but he did so with a deeper understanding of the world, enriched by Ayanna's perspective. As years passed, the cabin became more than a shelter. It became a home filled with laughter, learning, and shared purpose. Jack and Ayanna faced many more challenges, but they faced them as a team. The bond created by an ancient law had grown into genuine friendship, trust, and eventually love, a love that was rooted in respect and strengthened by shared hardships. They often looked back on the day of the storm, remembering how fear and uncertainty had led to a life-changing decision. They realized that small acts of kindness, like opening a door to a stranger, could ripple into the future in ways no one could predict. Jack would sometimes tell visitors, "It is not just the law that binds us. It is choice. We chose to care for each other. And that is what makes our life strong." Ayanna would nod, adding, "And respect for each other, and for our traditions, guided us. That is what made our bond true." Their story became known across the plains as a tale of courage, kindness, and honor. Parents told it to their children as a lesson in compassion, and travelers shared it around campfires, reminding everyone that even in a world full of hardship, trust and humanity could prevail. In the quiet moments, when the wind was still and the snow lay soft across the plains, Jack and Ayanna would sit together by the fire, sharing stories and watching the flames dance. They did not need words to feel the depth of their connection. They had learned that life was unpredictable, but trust, kindness, and understanding could create a bond stronger than fear or superstition. Years later, the cabin still stood, a symbol of endurance, care, and love. Jack and Ayanna had lived full lives, teaching others, helping those in need, and showing that even a single act of generosity could change the course of many lives. Their story was told and retold, not as a tale of law or obligation, but as a testament to the power of human kindness and the strength of shared choice. And so, what began with a single act of shelter during a fierce storm had become a lifelong journey of trust, respect, and partnership. Jack and Ayanna had learned that sometimes the greatest adventures are not in the battles we fight or the lands we explore, but in the lives we touch and the bonds we create along the way.